Hi friends. Today and for the next few lessons we're going to talk about gravity. Gravity is something that's all around us and affects us every second of our lives, and yet we don't really think about it too much because it's always there. We can't see gravity, but we can see the effects of it. For instance, if I have a ball and I drop the ball, it falls down. It didn't drop up. It didn't stay in the same place. It dropped down towards the earth, towards the center of the earth. That's important to remember. People always think like, if I'm on the other side of the planet and I drop something, is down still the same direction? No, but down is always towards the center of the earth. Gravity is a force. We talked a little bit about gravity when we made the balloon cars. And with our balloon cars, the air that was trapped inside the balloon created a force while escaping to push the balloon car. A force is an action that will start something moving, stop something moving, or change the direction of it. So if I have this ball right here, it's perfectly happy to stay right there and not move anywhere. I'm going to put some force on it and start it rolling. That was a start action. I'm going to put a stop action over here to make the ball stop. Started with an action and I ended it with an action. Now I can also exert force on this and make it change direction. So let's say I'm going to roll it towards the camera, but before it falls off the end, I'm going to move the direction. So I started it, I changed the direction, and I caught it. 3 kinds of actions right there. I want you right now to think about all of the different kinds of actions that create force. The wind makes the trees move. You can push a shopping cart to get it to roll. You can pull a door open. An explosion under a rocket will send it into space. A spring will bounce. Pushing down on the pedal of a bicycle will make it start, but squeezing the brakes will make it stop. And after you throw a ball up into the air, it comes back down. So I created the motion of it going up, but gravity was the force that pulled it back down, which is very interesting because that means there can be 2 forces on an object at the same time. In fact, there can be many, many forces on an object at any time. Gravity is a force of attraction that happens between any 2 objects. So I am holding this baseball, and I suppose it has some kind of gravity, but it's a very, very small amount of gravity, especially when compared to the immense amount of gravity that the Earth is putting on the baseball. Something that's very light does not make a lot of gravity. Something gigantic, like the Earth, makes a lot of gravity. But in fact, it makes enough gravity to hold us tiny specks on its surface. Even the biggest things on Earth would be tiny, tiny specks compared to the globe that I have right here. Think of the tallest trees or buildings or the biggest things you've ever seen. They're absolutely tiny compared to the size of the Earth. And so they're held to the surface of the Earth by the gravity that is being created by the weight of the Earth. So even though we're tiny in being held to the Earth, it's also important to remember that something that's gigantic, like the moon, which is about 1/3 of the side of the Earth, is being held in orbit by the force of gravity that the Earth creates on it. For our first lesson, I want to explore one of the most interesting things about gravity that we can all see. But before we get started, I'd like you to make a collection of things that won't break when you drop them. And some of the things should be small, and some of the things should be big. So I like to use balls. So I've got golf ball and a handball and a softball and a tennis ball and I also have a basketball. So we're going to be dropping a lot of round things today. So get that together and then we'll move on to the next part of the lesson. For our first experiment, I want you to find the biggest object and the smallest object that you have. Okay, for me it's this basketball and the smaller one is this handball. And we're going to hold them at the same height and we're going to drop them. The question is, which one is going to hit the ground first? So before we start, I want you to guess which object you think is going to hit first, the bigger, heavier object or the smaller one. And I'm going to start, but I want you to pause this video before you see what happens in my experiment, and I want you to try your experiment. Okay? Surprised to find that the small object and the large object fell at the same rate? It is an amazing fact of gravity that any two objects that are dropped at the same time will also land at the same time. So what I would like you to do now is to take your various objects that you collected and try dropping them and see if they land at the same time as each other. Remember, it's very important to hold them at the same height. Even if your hands are off slightly, or if you let go of one sooner than the other, that will affect when they hit the bottom. For your homework, I'd like you to write down what objects you found, and when you dropped them, did they all land at the same time? All right, have fun doing the science experiment, and I'll see you next week. We'll talk more about gravity.